Hey guys, Brody here with Squid's Pressure Washing LLC, Kansas City's highest rated exterior cleaning company and a veteran owned business. This one is for the homeowners that own Troy-built pressure washers with Briggs Stratton engines. I'm going to give you a handful of ways that you can diagnose a starting engine that dies shortly after the, not necessarily diagnose, but solutions that will work. But here we go. First and foremost is don't buy Briggs & Stratton engines. And that's just honest. They are finicky at best. So if you have an option, bounce over to Home Depot and buy a Ryobi, because it's probably a better engine with a Honda on it. So believe it or not, the Ryobis are better than the Troy-built. But Briggs & Stratton have an ugly, nasty habit, and I'll show you really quickly what that is. Alright, so that's the old carburetor, and it got gummed up pretty good, but also the springs stretched out so that it wasn't quite giving fuel when it needed to give fuel to the engine. So rather than cleaning that and replacing the springs, because once you start putting springs on something, you can stretch them out. It's just easier and actually better to buy not a Briggs & Stratton carburetor, but a less expensive, but also functioning carburetor. And the reason is that Briggs & Stratton carburetor is super finicky, so you might as well spend less money on another carburetor that's going to be just as finicky. But maybe not, maybe even better. And the carburetor I got for it was like 16 bucks on Amazon. So if it starts and then dies, there's a really good chance that you're not getting fuel to the engine. And there's a couple different reasons why that happens. One is the carburetor jets are clogged. That should be your first option. Make sure you take apart all of the rubber and plastic out of the carburetor, and I'll show you how to do that with this old one here in just a little bit, before you soak it in carburetor fluid, because carburetor cleaner will swell the rubber and the plastic, and the thing will never work right again unless you put an overhaul kit on it, which is a couple bucks, but about the same cost as a brand new cheaper carburetor. So step number one, throw your Briggs & Stratton as deep in the woods as you possibly can. Rule number two, check out the carburetor, clean the jets. I'll show you how to break down this particular carburetor. The other thing is it doesn't come with a fuel filter. So you should probably put a fuel filter on it, because there's a lot of junk and just funky stuff that'll end up in your gas tank. And a couple pieces of dirt, like the finest dirt that you can possibly find, will clog up that carburetor jet. So put a fuel filter on it. I forget what rule we're on because these Briggs & Strattons are so finicky, but this right here, that's technically a thermostat. And that thermostat, when it gets warm on these ReadyStarts where you don't have to choke it, which is really silly, just buy an engine you have to choke. It's 15 extra seconds. But what it does, this here is closed, and it's hot now because I've been running it. I got it to run. This here is closed. This is choked off, so this should fire it up, and within just a few seconds when it's warm, that should pop open. Now with this particular one, like I said, it wasn't getting enough fuel, but this was really slow to open. So I'm going to check it again tomorrow and hope that it's just because it sat for a while and this thing's good and warmed up and fixed itself, because sometimes they will. But if not, I'm probably going to have to replace that for the homeowner. But again, that is a thermostat. And if it gets sticky and it doesn't open the carburetor flap, it's never going to run. It'll start in this position, but it'll die shortly after. This spring on the other one was wide open. It wasn't doing its job either, which is another reason why it's best just to buy another carburetor, for gosh sakes. Don't fiddle with all the springs just to find out that the carburetor is junk. But these are the two ways. Also, I've seen videos where this is missing completely. So I can't stress enough that it's just best to buy an aftermarket carburetor for these gosh darn Briggs & Strattons. But if that doesn't work, and if it sits for a season, you pretty much need a new carburetor anyway. If you didn't drain the gas off and open up the carb, you pretty much need a new one anyway. It's not even worth it to try to rebuild the other one because the cost, like I said, is less expensive just to get another carburetor. The other thing, like I said, is this little thermostat, and I forget the technical name for it, but if you have this particular model and you have your parts manual, you can find it pretty easy. It's a unique looking little bell-shaped housing. Looks like a thermostat, like an automotive thermostat. And that, if it sticks, again, won't open that up. So I hope that helps. If you guys have any questions, leave them down below. Again, this was for the homeowners, not necessarily the professional pressure washing contractors, because they're not using these machines. Chances are really good they're not. 99% of them are not using Briggs & Stratton engines. So that tells you anything, that professional pressure washing contractors are using almost exclusively Honda engines, sometimes Kohlers, but Kohlers have an EFI problem, and also Vanguard, which is sold by Briggs & Stratton, but it's actually made by Toyota. So, again, you won't find a Briggs & Stratton engine on most reputable pressure washing contractors' units. So thanks for watching. If you like the video, please click that thumbs up. If you want more videos geared towards professional pressure washing contractors and homeowners, click subscribe. Thanks.